Okay, boys, welcome to LJG Sports. So, what are the Spurs going to do with this second overall pick? They were blessed again by the lottery gods this past lottery, not getting and winning the number one pick to get Cooper Flag, but we have a very good pick in the second pick overall. And the consensus is Dylan Harper. And so, right when the Spurs got that pick, it was like, okay, the Spurs, they don't really need another guard. Are they going to trade her for Giannis? Are they going to do this? Are they going to try to trade up? Are they going to try to trade down? So, I'm going to try to go over all the possibilities of what the Spurs should do with the number two pick. I have like five or six different scenarios, and we can go up how the lineups would look with the Spurs going in each of these directions. And I'll let you know what I think the Spurs should do after going over every single scenario. So the first scenario we're going to go over is just drafting Dylan Harper at 2 straight up. Dylan Harper is the consensus number 2 for a reason. I feel like he would be a number 1 in a lot of other drafts. Like last year, I think he probably would have gone number 1. With questions about Alex Sarr and Zachary Research. So Dylan Harper is the second best player in this draft. They could just go best player available. If they take Harper, they would have a very deep guard rotation, and it would probably make KJ, Keldon Johnson, go down to 3 to play at the 3 spot, which he can do and he has done before. And then assuming the Spurs pick, let's say, a big at 14, the lineup could look something like Fox, Vassell, Champagnie, Sohan, and Wemby as the starters. And you have Harper and Castle coming off the bench with KJ playing the backup 3, Barnes playing the backup 4, and Thomas Sorber your backup center. Not a bad lineup, a little small because we're playing so many guards, but our guards are big. Like Harper and Castle are like 6'6", 6'5", respectively. So next scenario we're going to go over is the Spurs drafting Ace Bailey at 2. So this is going the route of, okay, we have the number 2 pick. We're not going to take Dylan Harper because we have Stephon Castle, because we have De'Aaron Fox. We have guys like Devin Vassell and Keldon Johnson who play at guard. Let's draft the next player available, which a lot of people, especially after the combine, question whether it's someone like Ace Bailey, whether it's VJ Edgecombe, or Trey Johnson. For this scenario, we're going to go Ace Bailey because he has the highest upside. But if the Spurs were to do this, I'd actually prefer they probably go someone like Trey Johnson, who had a very good vertical at the combine, who is a great shooter, and is just, I feel like, a safer pick than Ace Bailey. But if they just decide to go the second best player available at 2 and go for more of a positional need, the lineup could look something like Fox, Vassell, Champagnie or Bailey starting at the 3, and then Sohan and Wemby. And then your backups would be Castle, KJ, obviously the other one of Champagnie or Bailey, Barnes at the 4, and Sorber at the 5. I'm saying Thomas Sorber at the 5 because I'm assuming the Spurs are going to pick a backup center at the 14th pick if they don't address it in free agency. So I like a guy like Thomas Sorber. I think he'll be there at 14. I think Derek Queen probably won't be there at 14. I don't think Kaman Malawach will be there at 14. So I'm just saying Thomas Sorber for the exercise. So that's scenario number 2. Scenario number 3 is we could trade back and draft in the lottery still, like preferably 3 through 8, but trade back with a team that wants to go up and get Dylan Harper and pick up some draft capital along the way. So who knows how much draft capital we could get, but trading back to around the 3 or 8 range, maybe someone like the Hornets, the Jazz, the Wizards, even the Pelicans, teams who were hoping to pick higher in this draft. Maybe you get all of them on the phone as like, hey, best package wins. Y'all can have Dylan Harper. And the Spurs trade back to around the 3 or 8 range, not going back too far because you still want to get a blue chip prospect. And if that was to happen, I feel like if the Spurs drafted around 3 through 8, they could pick up a guy like Con Kneppel, or again, Trey Johnson, VJ Edgecombe, but this would be more of a wing. So I'm going to say Con Kneppel for this exercise because I think Trey Johnson and VJ Edgecombe will go very quickly. So the lineup of that would look like Fox, Vassell, Kneppel or Champagnie at the 3, Sohan and Wemby, and then Castle, KJ, Champagnie, or Kneppel, Barnes, and Sorber. Scenario number 4 is draft Harper at 2 and trade Fox or Castle. So this is something I've seen people say. It's like, okay, we can trade for Giannis, but let's trade Castle instead of Harper with the number 2 pick. Maybe the Bucks are more interested in a proven Castle or a Fox than Harper, an unknown at 2, even though I feel like he'll be really good. Maybe the Bucks do that. And so in that case, you would have Harper your starting point guard, I would assume. Or he would be your 1 or 2, depending on who you trade of Castle or Fox. That would be your other guard that starts. If not, for spacing issues, you could have Vassell in there and have them be the 6th man. But then you have Champagny at the 3 for obviously for spreading out the offense reasons, with Giannis at the 4 and Wemby at the 5. You would then have guys like probably Malachi Branham at your shooting guard. Probably KJ, Barnes, and Sohan are traded, so you'd have Vassell, you'd have Branham. You still have Blake Wesley. Maybe you don't trade away the 14th pick. Maybe you have Thomas Sorber. So not as a deep team, but definitely a scary starting 5 of, let's say, Harper, Castle, Champagny, Giannis, and Wemby. Like, that'd be scary. And that'd be a big team, too. That's scenario 4. Scenario 5 is just straight up trade the number 2 pick for Giannis with obviously more picks and stuff like that. That lineup, I would think Fox, Vassell, Champagny, Giannis, and Wemby. You'd have Castle and Branham coming off the bench. Possibly the 39th pick starting at the 3 or 4. Maybe Sohan starting at the 4, and then either Thomas Sorber, or if we trade that pick in the Giannis trade, another big, just a backup big at the 5. And the last scenario, I should say, for the Spurs to go down is trade/wait for Cooper Flag. So if they trade for Cooper Flag, I think this would be a very pick-heavy trade. I think the Spurs would trade up to number 1. They would give the Mavs the number 2, obviously, possibly the number 14, and then I would say for a talent like Cooper Flag, maybe 2-3 other first-round picks in the future, whether it's the Hawks picks, whether it's our own picks, whether it's the pick swaps we have with Minnesota, Sacramento, Dallas, or Boston. I feel like that would be the case. So if we do trade up, it wouldn't be players. It would be a lot of picks, I think, unless Dallas wanted someone. But so we could either trade for the number 1, which would take, obviously, draft capital, or we could wait for Cooper Flag. And what I'm saying here is very unlikely, but let's say Cooper Flag does what Alex Sarr did last year and doesn't go to train with the Mavericks, and he wants to go to San Antonio. I know people have been posting videos about how Cooper Flag didn't look happy about the Mavericks getting the number 1 pick. There were reports earlier, before the lottery, that he did want to go to San Antonio. When people were asking about him going to the Mavericks, he never stated that he would like going to the Mavericks and stuff like that. So obviously he could just be media trained, and probably that's what he's doing. But I believe Wemby did mention the Spurs when they won the lottery. And so it'd be very interesting if that happened. I still don't think that would happen like Alex Sarr did last year, because Alex Sarr wasn't a consensus generational talent like Cooper Flag is. So, or maybe Cooper Flag doesn't do that, and maybe the Mavericks just do Nico Harrison things and draft, let's say, Dylan Harper at number 1. Which, overall, honestly, I think Dylan Harper could be better than Cooper Flag one day. And that's just my personal take after looking very deeply into Dylan Harper after the Spurs got the number 2 pick. But either way, either you trade up for Cooper Flag, or you just hope that Cooper Flag either A, says I don't want to go to Dallas, or B, the Mavericks just screw it up and don't pick Cooper Flag at number 1. In that case, you still get Cooper Flag and keep most of your current roster. That lineup would look, I think, like Fox, Vassell, Sohan, Flag, and Wemby. You could then have Castle, Champagny, Barnes, Sorber, and either Keldon Johnson or Malachi Branham as your backup shooting guard. That would be a very scary team. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying out of these 6 scenarios, I would want the 6th scenario to happen where we get Cooper Flag, but I think it's unlikely. I also think I would like that scenario, obviously, if we didn't have to trade up. Depending on how much we'd have to give up to trade up, I would be opposed to that also, because I do like Dylan Harper a lot. And so, with saying that, I don't think we should trade for Giannis unless we can get him for an absolute steal, like we did with De'Aaron Fox. So, for me, the question becomes: do you trade back, like at 3 through 8, and pick up a guy like Trey Johnson, Ace Bailey, VJ Edgecombe, Con Kneppel, who fits this team better, who can be immediate 3-and-D guy? Or do you pick the best player available at 2, Dylan Harper? Because I don't think you should pick Ace Bailey at 2. I think if you're not going to pick Dylan Harper at 2, you should trade back and pick up, because someone will draft Dylan Harper at 2. I mean, if the Spurs don't pick Dylan Harper at 2, someone will trade up, whether it's the Hornets, the Jazz, the Pelicans will trade up to 3, or the Sixers will just straight up pick Dylan Harper at 3, even though I feel like the Sixers would trade that pick because they really don't need another guard with McCain, Grimes, and Maxey. So yeah, for me personally, I'm saying just stick with it. Draft Dylan Harper at 2. And I know a lot of Spurs fans will be like, we don't need another guard who can't shoot. And I agree, but for one, Dylan Harper has great shooting mechanics and didn't shoot well from 3 at Rutgers. He shot 34%, which isn't terrible. That's like basically what Wemby shot from the 3 last year. And a lot of his shot selections, looking at his tape, weren't the best. On catch and shoot threes, he shot 39%. So I think he will be at the very least a decent shooter. Better than Fox, probably better than Castle, even though I really hope Castle takes a jump in that shooting department. So I hope he will be able to be at least serviceable at the 3. I'm shooting at the 3. And for me, it's like Dylan Harper can play the 1 or the 2, so that gives you versatility there because he has the great size. And I just think you take the best player available. Harper is a really good prospect. I would take him number 1 last year's draft, over Alex Sarr, over Zachary Risache, over Reed Shepard, even over Stephon Castle. I think looking at Stephon Castle as a prospect last year and looking at Dylan Harper as a prospect this year, Dylan Harper is definitely the better prospect. He's a better scorer, not as good a defender, but he's a better playmaker, better scorer, like I said, and a better shooter. So I just feel like all the intangibles are there too. I really like Dylan Harper as a prospect. I don't like that, again, we're adding another guard to this lineup. But I think you add Dylan Harper at 2, you take a big or a wing at 14, and you see what happens next year. You roll with the guys you have, the young guys you have, see what works, what doesn't work, because I still feel like we're adjusting to how Wemby plays and what's the best route to build a team around him. And plus, I feel like our greatest acquisition this year, De'Aaron Fox, has not had enough time to play with Victor Wembanyama, to really gel with him, to really work. We haven't had a full offseason under Mitch Johnson, the new head coach who can do things his way. So that's my take. I think they should just draft Dylan Harper at 2. I wouldn't be terribly upset if they traded back to draft someone like Trey Johnson or Ace Bailey, VJ Edgecombe, Colin Kneppel, because I get it, the positional need is there. But I would not trade away our future for Giannis Antetokounmpo. I've seen people even suggest things like trade the number 2 pick, the number 14 pick, 3 future first-round picks, KJ, Barnes, Sohan, and Castle for Giannis. I'm like, why would you do that? We would have no team after that. And another thing that I'm going to close on that a lot of people don't consider when we're discussing trades for Giannis, not only does that not necessarily fit defensively, it would, but it doesn't fit in the sense that we have another non-shooter who's probably worse shooter than Dylan Harper. But you also have to consider the financial ramifications of that. De'Aaron Fox is an extension available this summer. We're probably going to extend him. He'll be making $40-50 million next year. Giannis is already making $55 million a year. He only has 2 years left. Wemby, after this season, will be eligible for the rookie extension, which I think will make him about $40-something million a year. If we extend all those guys, we would have no money left on the rest of the roster. And yeah, that big three is crazy. That three-headed monster is insane, but you don't want to jeopardize your whole future just to have a championship window of literally maybe 2 years before you have to literally underpay everyone else on your roster. So that's my take. Again, if Giannis becomes available for extremely cheap like De'Aaron Fox did, then I would say do it. Other than that, I would say stay pat at 2. Draft the best prospect available, a really good prospect in Dylan Harper, and see what works next year.